Good morning, good morning. It is Wednesday, the 11th of June, 2025. I'm Graham Hughes. You are watching Morning Brew on Politics Social. Big shout out to everyone in the chat, as always. We've got Francis Winrow in there, Sarah Davis. We've got Scott. We've got Paula Thomas. We've got Elle, Veg Pie. We've got Ori, Plum Duff, One Angry Pagan, Captain, Jeannie Bottle, Michael Warner. We've got Saz in there. Hello, everyone. Hello. If you'd like to join our wonderful friends in the wonderful chat, all you need to do is hit the wonderful subscribe button and wait for 1 minute, and then you'll be able to opine fairly openly. Not too openly, because obviously if you're a troll, we will get rid of you. And see the people with the spanner next to their name, like Diz and One Angry Pagan and Alistair, they can boot you, okay? So don't upset them. Keep them sweet. You won't get booted for having a difference of political opinion necessarily. It'll just be if you're being a bigot or a troll. So we're going to be talking today about hypernormalization. I don't know if anyone saw this documentary. It's an Adam Curtis documentary from 2016. Very, very pertinent for 2016, that disastrous year. And I'm going to be talking about how America right now mirrors the hypernormalization of late stage Soviet collapse and what that means going forward for America. So the term hypernormalization wasn't invented by the documentary maker Adam Curtis. It was actually invented by a Russian guy called Alexei Yurchak. And it was a fake world everyone knows is fake, but they keep pretending that it's real. And so this isn't necessarily about partisan politics. This is more to do with the reality, about reality, and the fact that it disintegrates under authoritarian theatre, which is what we're seeing playing out in the US of A right now. So in the late days of the Soviet Union, people knew that the Soviet Union didn't work. The system didn't work. But they carried on and they pretended like it did. This fake world was necessary to create stability, not truth, not freedom, just the illusion of these things. And in the 2016 Adam Curtis documentary, which is available on iPlayer, called HyperNormalisation, which I really recommend you watch after watching this, it links the concept to the West in the post-1970s, particularly in finance, foreign policy, and media. For example, Gaddafi in Libya was used as like a cartoon supervillain for media simplicity, and US creating myths about UFOs in order to cover advanced weapon testing. They literally manufactured conspiracies to distract from real policies and real policy failures. You think about your average, and they are quite average, conspiracy theorist. They're actually helping the governments of the countries that they purport to dislike. So, for instance, the idea that 9/11 was an inside job. Famously, this has been a conspiracy theorist talking point now for 24 years. Still no evidence, not even an iota of evidence. It's just all conjecture and saying, well, how could it happen like this? I don't know. I'm not a civil engineer. I'm not an airline pilot. I don't build air. But anyway, how could it? How could it? How could this have happened? How could that have happened? And that mentality is like the thing that keeps us from doing what should be done in favor of making the governments of these countries seem like really all encompassing, all powerful, which they're not. I've got to stress this. They are not. America does not have the capability to pretend to land on the moon. It doesn't have the capability to pretend that two massive towers and the Pentagon are attacked by people hijacking planes. They don't. And then to keep everyone quiet, you've got to find people who are happy to, be given $1 million a day. How much would it cost you? How much would you charge if you knew something that would destroy America and you hated America and you hated it so much that you were willing to let 3,000 people die and yet you weren't willing to tell people the truth of what happened. Because what? Morality? You've already just said you're happy to let 3,000 people die horribly in a firestorm brought down from planes crashing into buildings. I mean, how much? How much would your silence cost? How much? And then times that by, I don't know, 10,000 people who would have to be involved in this conspiracy for it all to work. With elaborate holograms and people being shipped off to Area 51 and all this kind of nonsense. Yeah, and you've got to pay, so you've got to times the amount that you would want for your silence, your complicity in the murder of 3,000 innocent civilians, and you need to times that by 10,000. There's not enough money in the world, mate. End of. Impractical. Anyway, but what the 9/11 conspiracy theorists made it sound like was that the American government was all powerful. And the American government leaned into this massively. It loved the fact that people were going, oh my God, they've got the ability to do this. And you know, these dickheads in charge of countries and states and towns, villages, whatever, it's all a bit trestle table. Do you know what I mean? It's all a bit paper doilies. I don't think people understand that. A lot of politics is just like really, really stuck in the past. Kamala Harris raised like $1 billion for her campaign. What the fuck did she spend it on? It wasn't an amazing advertising campaign, was it? No, it was flyers and bunting. They spent $1 billion on bunting. Please behave. Anyway, so yeah. And what these incidents do, and we'll talk about this in the 1990s. The Clinton era deregulation led to this early internet sort of utopianism, and George W. Bush's total fantasy about the weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. This narrative was just accepted by the media and the public. Although no one will admit to being taken into it now, oh no, I was never taken in by it. No, I always believed that it was something that Saddam Hussein could do, and I really wish that I've been doing these daily shows back in 2003, because I would have been sitting here saying, I agree that Saddam Hussein is a terrible leader. He shouldn't be allowed to run a bath, never mind a country, right? However, he is the leader of that country, and to get rid of him, if you want to do a mad assassination plot, well, I guess that's up to the CIA. But the way that you don't do it is you don't invade the country, reset everything to year zero, like the freaking Khmer Rouge, and debathify the country. So the party that, or the group, the movement, whatever you want to call it, that Saddam Hussein was the head of was called the Ba'ath Party. Baath, I think, or Ba'ath Party. And he, when they got rid of him, they got rid of all the civil servants as well. All the people who were like doing jobs in the, oh my God, 4x4. Whoa! Sorry, just been stopped in my tracks by a hyperchat. Woo! Hyperchat for HyperNormalisation Day. Thank you, Dog 4x4. Chai has made the air in Memphis toxic. Or XII has made the air in Memphis toxic, and they seemingly turned on its builder. Has anyone bothered to ask these problem-solving computational behemoths how they would meet their energy demands and coexist with the other living organisms on this planet? I'm Kilroy. Thank you so much, Dark 4x4. That is outrageously generous of you. Thank you. And yes, I don't think anyone has. We need regulation of AI, like we needed regulation of social media, and we needed regulation of the internet, none of which has ever been particularly forthcoming. And now you have 7-year-olds that are exposed to the most horrific images and scenes and things like that they should not be seeing at that age. And there's fuck all anyone's doing about it. It's incredibly frustrating. And thank you very much, Dark 4x4, for bringing that up, but also for the amazing super chat. Thank you. Well, hyperchat. It's a super if it's up to 50 quid. 50 quid and over, it's a mega chat. 100 quid and over, it's a hyper chat. And 200 quid and over, it's an ultra chat. We don't normally get ultra chats on the show, but when we do, it's really fucking cool. So anyway, so I was saying that this sort of idea of these fantasies created by governments, not just in the US, but over here, all over the world. And then they get the media, their friends in the media, along with this fantasy. So let's think of some more examples apart from the weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, which, if you want to get rid of your man in Iraq, targeted assassination maybe, you don't invade a country and condemn hundreds of thousands of innocent people to death and then leave the entire region unstable and allow ISIS to come along and cause even more death and destruction and destroy people's lives and destroy priceless artifacts and priceless and destroy historical sites, UNESCO World Heritage sites, just blow them up in, whether that's happening in Mali or whether it's happening in Syria or whether that's happening in Iraq. They destroyed the past. They destroyed that link to the past for many people. And that's something that terrorists like to do. They like to distort the past. We see it all the time in terrorist organizations, but also in other terrorist organizations such as REFUC and the Tory party. And these people who want to rewrite history to that we stood alone in World War II. No, we didn't. You're hearing it from Trump now saying, it wasn't for us, you'll all be speaking German and Japanese now. Yeah, all right, Donny, whatever you say, mate. Britain didn't stand on its own. Britain had 55 other countries that are members of the Commonwealth. It wasn't that many back then when it was the Empire, but, we had support from all over the world. We had an empire still in 1939. Germany didn't. Germany had its empire taken off it after World War I. That's why in Namibia and Togoland and Tanganyika were handed over to the Allied powers. That's why they were taken over by France and taken over by Britain, taken over by South Africa. So Nauru was German. North Papua New Guinea was German. That was taken over. Anyway, so these myths that are repeated so often that they become normalized, that people believe them. People believe in America that migrants are coming to take their jobs. And Trump started off by saying, I'm going to get rid of all these migrants that are causing crimes, that are doing crime. I'm going to stop them. I'm going to come along, going to wipe them out, going to take them to back where they came from, right? But the thing is, there weren't that many criminals. And so they've deported the criminals they could find, not that many of them. And now they're rounding up women and children. They're dragging children from their elementary schools in America. They're dragging children away to God knows where. They are abducting women off the streets, masked men with no ID, no badges, are abducting women off the streets in America, putting them in the back of vans and taking them God knows where to do God knows what to them. And yet the biggest threat, if you ask a dickhead like J.K. Rowling, facing us right now, she'll say, it's trans women. That's what it is. It's trans women. Now, why would you go through the whole process of transitioning, of taking hormones, of having operations, when you can literally just put a mask on, get a group of mates, get your transit van, and then jump out and just grab any woman you want off the streets? And fuck all's going to happen. Say that you're ICE, you're masked. Nobody knows. Nobody knows. Thank you very much to Umka for the €5 super chat. I think that every big war is initially planned as a quick and efficient special operation, and every time it turns into a bloodbath. Can't disagree with that. Daylight Dave, it's always the ones who didn't do the fighting that are the most jingoistic. Yeah. The most progressive, green-spirited, green-spirited, is that a term? Concerned about the future of the planet, both militarily and politically, but also in terms of the environment. Friend of mine is someone who served 2 tours in Iraq and 2 tours in Afghanistan. And he's not like, let's have more wars. He's very, very not, let's have more wars. There's this great quote from HyperNormalisation. Everyone knew the game was rigged, but no one could imagine an alternative. And that's a kind of, yeah. Also, I mean, with the advent of new things, so essentially the idea of hypernormalization is this, right? When something first happens, like Trump decides that he's not going to let any Muslims come into America anymore, there's a massive outrage. And then it kind of peters down, and then that stopped for whatever reason. And then he does it again, but not all Muslims. He does it for a certain number of countries. This isn't his first term. This isn't second. And there's a bit of outrage again, and he has to sort of back down. But then his ban gets backed by the courts because he rules the Supreme Court, and then it's normalized. That is normalized. But it's not just the normalization of things as we get more used to it, like the heat of a hot bath or whatever. It's hot, really hot when you first put your foot in, but then you get used to it, right? Boiling frog and all that. It's not just that. This is hypernormalization. This is creating a fantasy world in which people live. I would argue Brexiters live in a fantasy fucking world. They live in a world where there's 200 countries, 50 of them are in Europe and are fairly rich, 150 of them aren't in Europe, and 140 of them aren't particularly rich in any way, shape, or form. And yet those countries are going to give us loads of money somehow. They're going to buy all our stuff because we're going to be free to trade with these countries that are poor on the other side of the world, that are thousands of kilometers away from us. They live in a fantasy world. Trump's MAGA voters live in a fantasy world. They live in a world where all their problems in their life are not caused by economics, not caused by billionaires stealing all the money. They're not caused by boomers taking up all the housing stock. No. They're actually caused by immigrants, people coming from other countries. And for a nation that is made almost entirely of immigrants, except for the few Native Americans who are shunted onto reservations and given no respect and given no, they're not respected at all in America, to a horrifying degree, by the way. I know it varies in different states, but oh my God, like just the horror show that is the history of America in its treatment of Aboriginal Native people is sickening, absolutely sickening. I can say the same about Canada, I can say the same about Australia, say the same about New Zealand to lesser or greater extents. And so you've got a nation of, let's say 300 million at least, probably more, but 325 million immigrants. And now you're going after immigrants. That is just, it's kind of mind-blowing. I'm just going to go Native American population of USA. It's less than 3 million. Okay. There's less than 3 million Native Americans in the US. So there's 330 million people in America. So 327 million people are immigrants. They all came from somewhere else, or their ancestors did at some point in time. Paula Thomas, thank you very much. Transphobes are almost always frightened that they are really trans themselves. Yeah. J.K. Rowling mentioned that in a ridiculous essay that she published in 2020. She said, well, things have been different. When I was a kid, I might have been trans myself. And I'm like, okay, go and do it. Go and do it. To be fair to her, I don't want to be, but, she won't need that much in the way of hormones or anything. Just needs to cut her hair. Anyway. Sorry, I shouldn't sit here slagging off J.K. Rowling. It's something I would never say. She can fuck off. Anyway, so yeah, and then we look at sort of this idea of perception. Okay, the perception of reality that we have, and this is managed. I often talk about how it is the view that you get of the world is very much shaped by the media. So the thought that you have when you think of a particular country, it is usually shaped by what you've been experienced in the media about that particular country. So places like Sierra Leone, Rwanda, Lebanon, Beirut, the capital, like they are entrenched in our minds in certain ways because of how we feel about news stories from 20, 30, 40 years ago. And that is particularly unhelpful to start with. But at the same time, it gives people this distorted view of the world entirely because most of the news stories we get are bad news. It's an earthquake, it's a riot, it's a fire, it's a people dying. You know, it's something horrible has happened in this country. And that's the only time you've heard the name of that country, you're forever going to associate that horrible thing that happened many, many moons ago with that country. So Nepal with an earthquake, or Ethiopia with a famine in the 1980s. If I say Biafra to you in Nigeria, the first thing you're going to think of is if you were old enough, is the famine. And if I say Colombia, you're probably going to think of Pablo Escobar, if that's all you know about Colombia. But I've been to these places, and they're a lot more than that, you know? That's just like someone looking at Britain and going, oh yeah, that's the place they had the Toxteth riots in 1981. I'm not going there, it's too dangerous. Because that's all I've heard about Britain. Obviously, that's not the case, because we play football and make movies and stuff, and TV shows. But generally speaking, we don't know that much about a lot of countries around the world. And so what it does, it gives people a distorted lens to view the world. And they think it's a lot more scary than it actually is. They think it's a lot more dangerous than it actually is. But then, in a fit of cognitive dissonance that only a Brexiteer can hold, they also think they've got loads of money in these countries and they're going to buy all our Nissan Qashqais somehow. Do you know, Farage is talking about bringing back coal mining in Wales. Umka, thank you very much for the €5 super chat. Sure, all that poor facts in Africa need UK's expensive consulting financial services for billionaires and souvenirs with royal family faces on them. Souvenirs made in China, by the way. But yeah, Umka, point taken. Like, people have a distorted view of the world because we live in a fantasy. We live in a distorted reality. That people go about their daily business, and instead of blaming the people who are fucking them over, the politicians, the landlords, the landed gentry, the people, the oil oligarchs, the tobacco barons, the arms manufacturers, the people who are stealing their money and spending it on fucking super yachts or weapons of mass destruction or whatever they want to spend their money on, cocaine, mostly, I think, with these rich people. They're all, they don't see them as the threat. They don't see them as the bad guys because they're too busy focused, hyper-focused on immigrants and trans women. So yeah, we have these social media bubbles. We have algorithmic filters. So if you're scrolling through TikTok, you'll see that even if you don't subscribe to certain people, you will see them cropping up time and time again. We've also got companies like BlackRock and Palantir. These companies that are managing global finance, surveillance, data. And people use sort of, TikTok or antidepressants even to numb themselves. I mean, I'm not saying that they're doing this proactively. It's more of just something that happens while you're going about your everyday. But we're using it to kind of like numb ourselves against the reality of what's going on and things that should be shocking or outrageous, like Trump bringing in the ban on people from different countries, becomes less shocking over time. Putin invading Crimea. It was absolutely shocking at the time. His people shooting down a passenger aircraft full of people. MH17, that was shocking at the time. But then as time and distance goes on, because we as humans, we like equilibrium. We like things to just, feel normal to ourselves, which is fine, because otherwise we will be going out of our minds because we're freaking out every morning when we read the news and going, oh my God, what has happened now? And yeah, we do become a little bit numb. I'm not innocent to this myself, okay? And it's A world that the oligarchs, the tech bros, the oil barons, the oil oligarchs, the filthy fuel oligarchs have created. They have created this world that we live in at the moment, this hyper normalized world. And when Trump first, why hasn't he brought in the Insurrection Act? Because he's seen how far he can push it. I've said this many times. He's like a toddler, just a little kid, seeing where the boundaries are, seeing what he can get away with. And he's going to keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And when there's some pushback, he'll go, okay, then. But then he'll do something half-cocked that is still horrific, but it's not as horrific as the thing that he's done earlier. And Americans and British people were already trained to accept false narratives to preserve emotional comfort, because we all crave emotional comfort. And we have this in our personal lives as well. We've been in relationships. I'm sure we've all been in relationships where horrible things have been done to us, or friends have betrayed us, or whatever. But over time, it becomes less of an issue, less of a deal. Because of course it does. Otherwise, you would drive yourself mad over it. Now, it's up to you whether you wish to forgive someone who's done something wrong to you, if they ask for forgiveness. But when it comes to these politicians, when it comes to likes of Farage and Tice and Trump and all these billionaire gobshites who are just making loads and loads of money, feathering their own nests and lining their own pockets with ill-gotten side hustles, they're not asking for forgiveness. They'll never ask for forgiveness. They'll just keep doing horrible things until somebody stands up to them and says, no, stop it, or stops them one way or another. Trump didn't break the system. He understood that it was broken and he turns it into theatre. That's exactly what he's done with this Surkov style chaos to flood the zone with nonsense. Surkov is an advisor or he was an advisor, I don't know if he's still around, to Vladimir Putin. He got his break in fucking TV extravaganzas, magic shows, I don't know, just... He was an entertainer. He was an entertainer, and he got into the realms of politics in Russia. And what he went about doing was creating these mad narratives that left everyone confused. So they didn't know what was happening. They didn't know what was up, what was down, what was left, what was right. He would fund pro-Kremlin groups, but he would also fund anti-Putin groups. He would fund LGBT groups. He would fund anti-LGBT groups. And he would be very open about the fact that they were funding them both, which left everyone really confused, and people in a state of confusion are easily manipulated. It's a Devin Brown trick. If you ever watched Devin Brown back in the day, he's still going, but I don't know if he does many shows these days. But he would do things where he would confuse people, and once people are confused, they're in a state of a mentality where it's easier to manipulate them. So one thing that he used to do, he used to go up to people and shake their hand. But when he shook their hand, he would hold onto their wrist and pull his hand away in a weird way. That would confuse them, and their brain would be thinking about that. They'd be like, did he just do a weird handshake? Was that weird? Did I do that? Did he do that? And while they're thinking about this, he's like, you don't mind if I just take your watch, do you? And they're like, yeah, because their brain is focusing on the weird thing that just happened. They are confused because of the way he shook their hand, and they give him the watch. They give him the wallet, and he's like, thanks very much, I'll just take that. And he walks off with their wallet, and you're watching it going, oh my God, is that real? And I'm sure that he did it to 10 people, and this was the one that actually worked, but it just shows the sort of proof of concept. Confuse people, easier to manipulate because they are distracted. And if there is a WMD in existence right now, it is a weapon of mass distraction. And oh my God, I say weapons of mass distraction. There are so many of them coming at you from so many different facets, from different directions, from different news sources, from different websites and social media sites and video sites. It's so hard to keep up. It's hard to keep up for me, and I'm pretty on top of a lot of this. And sometimes I think probably better for my mental health if it wasn't, but at least I get to share with you watching this. And honestly, you keep me sane. Your messages here going, yeah or no, or whatever. It's like at least discussing it, at least being aware of what's going on and having this discussion. Otherwise, I think I would explode. I think I would literally explode. Yeah. So the Surkov style fucking circus is evident with Trump saying there are good people on both sides when talking about Nazis and people who are against Nazis, injecting QAnon into the public imagination without ever really explicitly saying its name, but it was there. It was huge. It was one of the catalysts of the 2021 January the 6th attack on the Capitol building in America. And you campaign like a populist and govern like a plutocrat. The rule of the wealthy, the power of the wealthy. And Trump used, in 2016, if you remember back in those days, Trump used the language of the Occupy Wall Street. He used the anti-elite language. And Farage does this all the fucking time. Claims to not be part of the elite. In Trump's case, while being a millionaire. In Farage's case, while being a privately educated multimillionaire who worked in the city, career politician, lining his own nest, whinging on the front page of various newspapers for a week that he couldn't get a bank account with a certain bank because he didn't have enough money in his accounts. It's two-tier banking. I mean, can you imagine being one of these knobheads who goes around knocking on people's doors, asking them to vote for refuck? And you're like, okay, so what are they going to do for me? Nothing. We're going to do fucking nothing for you. What we're going to do is we're going to make sure that billionaires and multi-millionaires can get the bank account at the bank that they want to get a bank account at. Well done. Well done. So yeah, with Trump, his lies, because he just lies all the time. I think, like the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times or something, they printed all of his lies from his first term, like 30,000 lies. He lies as easily as he breathes, but he lives his own reality. He will never back down. He will never say sorry. He will never. He will never acknowledge that he's fucked up ever. And in that way, he is the world's best, unfortunately, gaslighter. He is the gaslighter in chief. He is an absolute master at gaslighting people. And his lies become more persuasive than the truth because he knows, and the people around him know, and the people pushing Project 2025, the Heritage Foundation and the Federalist Society in America, 55 Tufton Street over here, they know that lies are more persuasive than the truth because lies are more emotional. And if you can get people on an emotional level, my friends, you're halfway there. He fabricated the voter fraud narrative, not because anyone believed it, but because they wanted to believe it. And this is the difference between belief and wanting to believe. I believe that a lot of people who claim to be religious, especially Christians, are very bad at this, right? Or very notable for this. They don't actually believe in God, in Jesus, in the resurrection, the afterlife, heaven, hell, the devil. They don't really believe in it. They just want to believe in it, which is a different thing. They want it to be true, but they know in their heart of hearts that it probably isn't. And you can tell the difference very easily by the way people live their lives. If people really believed in Jesus and judgment and heaven and hell and God of the Old Testament, the New Testament, the Christian Bible, they would live their life in a very, very different way than the life that they live. Especially you see these prosperity Bible people in America, evangelists who make millions in there. They fill up stadiums telling people all, Jesus has come. Jesus is alive and in my pants. Come and feel him for $1. there is a difference between believing and wanting to believe. So yeah, on January the 6th, fake patriotism, which is a huge factor in a lot of this authoritarian control that's been overrunning the West for many years now. But this fake patriotism turned into real violence, and Trump, he hasn't necessarily defeated democracy yet, but he's outperformed it. He sees this all as a reality TV show. He sees it as WrestleMania. No publicity is bad publicity for this man. He keeps failing upwards. He's unstoppable. And the moment of opportunity that the Democrats had to destroy Trump in January 2021, when they could have had him arrested straight from the White House and put in a holding cell for the rest of his life, they chose not to do that. And when people went, oh, let Trump out, let Trump out, let Trump speak, you show them the footage of what people did in his name on January the 6th. You make public shows of the trials of all the people who did these crimes. You show people the video of what they did. Tasering police officers. Stamping on the face of police officers on the steps of the American Congress building. You show them what they did. And Trump isn't allowed to speak. He's not allowed to give interviews. He's in a fucking holding cell somewhere in Guantanamo Bay. I don't give a fuck. Biden had the fucking opportunity to do that. The Democrats in January 2021, they had the presidency, they had the House, they had the Senate. And what did they choose to do? They wasted 2 fucking years taking him to task on a road to nowhere because they impeached him, knowing damn well that to get it passed through the Senate required at least 10 senators from the other side to fucking flip. Like they were going to do that. Are the Democrats just that ruthlessly naive? Are they deliciously dizzy? Are they fucking inept? Yes, I would say they are. And the fact that Biden was going to continue on, even though he would get to halfway through a sentence and forget where he was. He would talk so slowly. I mean, anyone with ADHD trying to listen to Biden talk, it was infuriating because it was just like, spit it out, man. He was like someone one finger typing. What's your email, Graham? It's... And I'm like, give me the keyboard. I'll do it. I will do it. Let me type it in. I believe in a believing God, says Paul. Yeah, thank you very much for the £2 super chat. Yeah, it does exist. People do believe in belief. Some people do, and they really do. I think the best example of people who really do fucking believe are the Jains. They're a sect of Hinduism that live in India, and they mean no harm to anyone. They are strictly vegan. They wear masks over their face so they don't inhale any insects, and they sweep the floor in front of them as they walk because they don't want to stand on anything on the ground. They don't want to stand on a bug. And they don't just say that they want people to be, not eat animals or whatever. They say that every living thing should be treated with respect. And they do. The people who call themselves Jains actually fucking go ahead and fucking do that. Whereas people who call themselves Christians in this country, in America, all over the world, who do not lead Christian lives, don't really believe. Because if they did, they would behave very differently. I mean, they like the acts, they like the rites, they like going to church, like seeing their mates, they like the whole rituals of it, they like the smell of the incense, the roar of the crowd, but they don't like actually living the life of a true follower of Mr. Jesus Christ. They simply don't. They simply do not do that. These people who have got a bit of money and they spend all their time, instead of, I don't know, like fucking being good to people who are poor, they spend it trying to install governments so they pay less tax on the money that they've got. It's not a very Christian thing to do. And do you know what isn't Christian as well? Going around the world, making people into Christians, Christian missionaries. I don't think it's very Christian to do that. I mean, you can go and like teach and stuff like that, but fair enough. But let's face it, if you're a Mormon, if you're a Jehovah's Witness, you're making money for your big American fucking company. You're making money for Latter-day Saints fucking .org. You're making a lot of money for someone. And it's not me. Anyway, so back to hypernormalization. The National Guard and the Marines have been sent to LA over the objections of the leaders of the state, the governor of the state, and also the mayor of LA. They're liberating LA apparently from what? I don't know. Vandalism, people spray painting walls. And Trump's narrative is that this is a gang-run war zone which needed military intervention. It's like, you watch the footage, they set a couple of fucking self-driving cars on fire, which is kind of like, fair enough. I mean, people get pissed off about these self-driving cars, so they're taking jobs away from drivers and taxi drivers and stuff. And, he sets the stage as like a military photo op. He gives a speech as if he's fucking invading Fallujah, just like he's going to be there this weekend having a fucking military parade. I guarantee there's going to be a massive American flag. It's going to be like the beginning of the movie fucking Patton. It's going to be like George C. Scott in front of a huge fucking American flag. He's going to be there with it, probably in a tin helmet, going, oh, look at all the troops and everything. A march past, we got missiles marching past. And the idea that like Marines are needed to protect ICE agents, immigrations and customs enforcements, like from the unruly 9-year-olds you're dragging out the schools, from the vulnerable women that you're picking up off the streets and putting in the back of a van to take God knows where. And the Department of Homeland Security has tried to get Trump's troops to arrest civilians. That's not in their purview. They're not allowed to do that. The police are allowed to arrest people, but not the National Guard. And this is a hyper normal moment. Everybody knows it's unconstitutional, and everyone's watching it happen anyway. And the media is doing that infuriating thing that it always does, it both siding the argument. Something that we've mentioned before on this channel. Sorry if it's getting a bit repetitive, but in the run-up to the Ford referendum in 2016, there's a story told by the woman from the news agents, Emily Maitlis, where she talks about when she was on BBC Newsnight, and they had 100 economists lined up ready to tell them that it was the wrong thing to do, but they had to have one economist that they tried to dig out, the one person who actually thought that Brexit would be good for the economy. And so this one person would be trotted out, some privately educated dickhead would be trotted out, and he'll be put on Newsnight and given the same level of the same amount of time to speak as someone who is, on the side of 100 different people, 100 different economists. So what Emily Maitlis says is, we'll spend all day just trying to find one economist who thought Brexit would be a good idea. Wasn't a problem finding someone who didn't think it was a good idea, and we had to present that as an equal argument. We saw this with Pascal Lamy, who was then head of the WTO, talking to fucking, who was it? It was one of those real bird-brained Tory knobheads, like Andrea Leadsom, I think, and they were giving them equal amount of weight to the argument about world trade, with the head of the World Trade Organization and some junior backbencher who didn't know a fucking arse from her elbow. This false equivalence, this, we have someone who, we have thousands, hundreds of thousands of scientists who will come on TV and talk about climate change and how it's our fault and what we need to do right now to mitigate the worst effects of it. And yet they are always paired up with someone who doesn't believe climate change is real. Someone like Richard Tice, who says, "Oh, it's just a weather thing. It's just a cyclical thing. It gets hotter and it gets colder." flying in the face of all scientific understanding for the last 50 years. And then they shot out bullshit like, oh, they used to think the world was flat, you know. No, they didn't. No, they didn't. Nobody who looked into it ever thought the world was flat. What? Do you think... Sorry, hang on. Just wait 1 second, right? Do you think that Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand of Spain in 1492, said to this Italian, right? This Genoese knobhead, right? Turns up, Christopher Columbus or Cristobal Colon, the arsehole, turns up and he says, oh, I want 3 ships to go and sail off the edge of the world. And they were like, yeah, sure. Have the Pinta, the Nina, the Santa Maria, yeah. Pinta. Yeah, off you go, mate. You'll be fine. Or did they think the world was round and it was a quicker way to get to... they needed an alternative way to get to India. Because the trade routes were taken over by the Dutch and the English and they couldn't get over there. Actually, it was the Dutch back then. I don't think the English were involved too much until a few years afterwards. Alistair, thank you very much for the £10 super chat. Bin Podcast Network said there are plans for protests all over the USA on the army celebration. We'll hope there's a big turnout for them, Graham. Yeah, I hope there's a big turnout, Alistair, but also it is a bit concerning because at some point Trump is going to order his troops to fire on the crowd. I have no doubt about that. He's just seeing what he can get away with. And unfortunately, he's not being taken to task by any of the people on his side. And this is another thing, like when people talk about like Labour and the Tories being the same, the two cheeks of the same arse and all this, right? And I've really got to push back on that because although Labour aren't perfect by any stretch of the imagination, when Labour fuck up, they are held to account. When the Tories fuck up, they are not. That is the big difference between the Tories and Labour. In the US, it's the same. With Democrats, every time they fuck up, if they wear a fucking tan suit, if they send an email from the wrong email address, they are hauled over the coals for the next 10 centuries. Whereas the other side, they don't care. Because what happens with the Labour lot, what happens with the Democrats in America is they are hauled over the coals by their own people. Because they are held to higher standards by their own MPs, by their own members of the House of Representatives, the House of Congress. You know, when there's a Democrat who has transgressed the rules of bribery and corruption, the Democratic Party will vote to censure them, along with the Republicans. The Republicans won't do that to their own. When it's a Republican, they're like, no, it's a Republican. Can't say anything about the Republicans. The Tories are the same. They will never take their own to task. And when it comes to a point where they actually do something about, say, Boris Johnson, it won't be because of the horrible thing that they've done. It won't be because Boris Johnson was dancing on the graves of over 100,000 people that he fucking killed with COVID. Literally dancing. Literally fucking dancing when you couldn't visit your nan. He didn't get thrown out because of that. He got thrown out because his approval ratings were in the fucking floor. That's why they got rid of him. It was a practical thing, not a moral thing. No morality came into it whatsoever because he got away with Partygate. That was the moment when the Tory party, if it had anything approaching a state of morality, which clearly it doesn't, they would have said, all right, that's too much. But no, they kept him on. They kept him on. They kept going, no, he's our man. He's our man. Oh, hang on, he's not doing very well in the polls. He's not our man. Oh, God, he's done these terrible things. We need to get rid of him now. That was the only reason. Meanwhile, the newspapers ran with a week the fact that Keir Starmer had had a beer here in Durham with his curry. But it works. It works. People were honestly saying, when you brought up the fact that Boris Johnson had done this, people will say, yeah, but, you know, Keir Starmer had that beer, didn't he? While you couldn't visit your nan, there were people having parties in number 10, Downing Street, big fuck-off house parties in one of the most expensive houses in the country. And there was cocaine. There was wine that was brought in suitcases. There were people having sex in these parties. There was piss, vomit, wine sprayed up the walls. They broke the kids' fucking swings in the back garden. They were living it up. And you couldn't go to your friend's funeral. You couldn't hold your loved one's hand while they slipped away. And that's become hypernormalized. People don't talk about it anymore. It's not mentioned. We've moved on. Oh, it's time to move on. It's time to move. Oh, you're still going on about that? It's time to move on. We hear this time and time again. And there's anything that we can do, anything we can learn from in history, we've got to not move on. You think if the families who were affected by the Hillsborough disaster, do you think that the families in the 97, if they just given up, if they just gone, oh, well, fair enough, if these things happen, we would have ever got that judgment in 2016 of unlawful killing of everyone who died? Do you think that would have happened? No. They kept fighting. They didn't let it go. And this is something that we all need to try and do. We need to... It's hard. They flood the zone. They have so much stuff. Boris Johnson, Donald Trump, very similar. They were in the news every day for doing something fucking stupid. Doing something cruel. Doing something malicious. Doing something horrible. Some fucking insult they've made up for someone. Something terrible that they had done. Brexit or Partygate. Or putting children in cages, which is something that Trump did in his first term of terror. Everybody knows what's happening in America right now is unconstitutional. Everyone is just watching it anyway. And the media is still doing this both sides bullshit. So yeah, this idea of there being these super gangs that were bringing migrants over from Mexico who are taking everyone's jobs. No, they're not, mate. If your job can be done better than someone who doesn't even fucking speak the language, who's not got a penny to their name, then maybe you should get better at doing your job. It's just an invented threat. You know what's going to take your job away? Fucking AI. Technology. It's going to take your job away. Doge, right? The Department of Government Efficiency. If that comes to your business, whatever company you work for, let's say you work for McDonald's, and you got a nice job working for McDonald's, right? It's minimum wage, but it's all right. You got this job working for McDonald's. McDonald's does a Doge. You know that Doge thing that you supported when the government were doing it? The Department of Government Efficiency. Let's have one of them. Let's have a Department of McDonald's Efficiency. Dome. And we'll bring in the Dome people, and they will decide to make everything automated. The burgers will be automated. The McNuggets will be automated. And it's just a machine. You press you don't even have to press the button. What happens is people turn up at the front desk and they put in their order, and it automatically, the machine that makes the burgers, spits a burger out, wraps it up, puts it on the fucking counter, and you pick it up and go, oh, thank you. There's robots, there's Roombas going around cleaning the place up. There's some SpaceX robot, Tesla robot, wiping the tables. They're going to take your jobs. Not the migrants. Not the migrants. The billionaires running their departments of efficiencies are going to take your fucking jobs. But you support the Department of Government Efficiency if you're a Trump voter. You're supporting these billionaires finding ways of making you redundant. It's not the foreigners. It's not the migrants. Same thing in this country. Are people still saying that migrants are stealing our jobs? Is that still a refrain? Or they're stealing all our benefits? Hypernormalisation. Alice Durham, thank you very much for the £5 super chat. I remember it all. I couldn't go to a family funeral when COVID lockdown. Seen it all. I worked at the NHS. I still do. We'll never forget it. Graham, thanks very much for the super chat, Alice Durham. And I'm really sorry that you couldn't do that. A friend of mine died during COVID, not of COVID. And only 30 of us could go to the funeral. And it still bugs me to this day. I don't think I'll ever be over it. I'll never be over losing my friend, but also I'm never going to be over the fact that his funeral should have been immense. Like, I'm not kidding. Like, the Manic Street Preachers should have played his funeral. Biffy Clyro should have been there. Courtney fucking Love should have been there. And they couldn't be. They all had to watch it on a fucking stream. I mean, that to me is just... And meanwhile, when we couldn't have a celebration in my friend's life, at the same time they were partying up in number 10. Those devious little bastards. Those horrible little twats for whom, it's not just like the law doesn't affect them, like social norms, just being a nice person. The normal rules of social cohesion don't apply to them. They can be as horrible as they like. Like Andrew Tate, he can be as horrible as he likes and he'll still have fans. He can be as nasty and depraved as he wants to. People will still defend him. Same with J.K. Rowling. It used to be the fact that, apart from a few nutter billionaires like William Randolph Hearst or whoever, but the vast majority of people, even if they were making their money in like fucking evil ways, they wanted to be loved. They wanted people to respect them, to like them. This is why you had these philanthropic slave fucking owners or slave traders who would spend money on libraries and public works and, clean water for the peasants, medicine. They'll set up hospitals in their name because they didn't want to be seen as a bad person. Alfred Nobel is probably the best example of this. Guy invented dynamite. Alfred Nobel is, ironically, the inventor of the Peace Prize, is responsible for more human deaths than possibly anyone else since the dawn of time. Not directly responsible, he didn't order the deaths, but anyone who uses dynamite to kill someone, which was a stabilized form of nitroglycerin, he invented it. Nobel invented that. And he felt so bad at the fact that people were using it to kill each other. He was thinking, it'd be great, we can mine things more effectively, we can, quarry things and use this explosive to do great public works. Maybe he didn't think that people would just use it to kill each other. Porn and murder is a great motivator for any kind of innovation in the world. And he felt really bad, and that's why he brought about the Nobel Prize. The Nobel Prizes, one of them was for peace, one of them was for literature. You got medicine, physics, chemistry. You haven't got one for... they didn't have one for economics for a very long time. That was just invented in the 1960s by some bankers who wanted to pretend that economists weren't the worst of the worst. They're actually helping humanity. Didn't Milton Friedman win the Nobel Prize for economics? You gods. So yeah, this is to go back to sort of manufactured myths and distorted reality. Fox News and AON, American one, what was it? ANO or whatever it's called. There's another one, isn't there? Fox News is the most famous one. True Social. They are these ecosystems of selective storytelling. They tell a narrative. They have a narrative, and you can tell when something mad happens, like the spat between Trump and Musk last week, which is now all forgiven for some reason. Like, they don't know what to do because they're like trying to work out how they can twist this into their fucked up narrative. But for a few moments when the news is coming down the wire that Trump and his mate Putin or Musk have fallen out, that they don't know what to do. They don't know what to say. They're like rabbits in headlights for a few moments until the Heritage Foundation, Murdoch, and the Federalist Society and 55 Tutton Street, whoever's telling them what to say, get onto the auto cue and get the words out that need to be said to, cleverly weave this narrative weave this news event into the narrative that they've been pushing for so long. When facts just don't work, it's easier to create a stronger, an emotional story that will resonate with people more strongly. And I think in many ways, actually, the emotional arguments against what the Tories did during lockdown meant people turned against them more in the last election than their cack-handed handling of the economy for 14 years. And I might be wrong, but I think in these days that people are more emotionally led when they're deciding what to believe and what not to believe. And it goes back to the fact that when a lot of people who exist right now, we're younger, we're kids, you go into a place to find knowledge, a library, and that knowledge would be curated. It might just be curated by a sign that says fiction, non-fiction. You know, but they went to a place of learning, a school, and the knowledge that was imparted was curated. It was given by a teacher who, for my generation, had to stick to the national curriculum because, well, if you went to a state school. And so nowadays, you don't have that. You don't have anyone curating the facts. You're just given a load of nonsense. You're given a load of things. Here you go, I have a bunch of things. And you have to sort it all out yourself. It's like, when I was a kid, my dad would often give me, like, I was working at his shop, his carburetor shop. He'd often give me like a tray full of nuts and bolts. And I'd have to fucking put them into the correct thing for 4mm, 5mm, 6mm, coarse thread, loose thread, like tight thread, whatever it was. You know, I'd have all these, and that was like the most tedious fucking job you could possibly imagine. Little nuts and bolts. I had those little slider things, you know, the little bit sticking out. I don't know what they're called, micro measure or something. To measure the bolts, I have to measure the screws, I have to measure to get them into. And it was like, fucking hell. But that's what it's like now going on the internet. It's like you're just given this random fucking tray full of nuts and bolts and you've got to sort them out. And you're like, what the fuck? Why do I have to do this? Why aren't they already sorted? You know what? And so without that curation, people just go on emotion. People just think, well, what makes me feel happy? What makes me feel angry? What evokes an emotion in me? And emotions are addictive. If you meet an angry person, they love to get angry. I mean, they seem to get off on it. They're just angry all the time. Like a man with a fork in a world of soup. They're just always pissed off. And they end up living to be pissed off. They go out and find things to be pissed off about. If you meet someone who's quite happy-go-lucky, they might shut themselves off from a lot of the things that happen in the world. They might not read the news. And I know that upsets people and they go, oh, you should know what's happening. But at the same time, if that's what's required to keep your mental health in check, then fuck, great, do it. You know, I got no problem with it whatsoever. I don't feel like we should be like forcing people to try and sift through all this bullshit that they're given on a daily fucking basis by the traditional media, by the new media, by social media, and having to sift through it all to discover what's real and what's not based on kind of like their feelings. And there's some of us who are trying our very hardest to sift through that shit for everyone else and to say, look, you know, this is probably what's going on the balance of probabilities, and this crusade against net zero, crusade against trans people, crusade against immigrants, crusade against Europe, who, you know, insert villain here, is bullshit, and explain to people why it's bullshit, because that's damaging. That's really fucking damaging. And, you know, Trump's base do not need truth. And I often think about the way that when you're dealing with someone who is very religious and you're having a debate with them, or when you're dealing with a conspiracy theorist, and I'm not saying that all conspiracy theorists are religious, or all religions are conspiracies, whatever. I'm not saying that. But there is a certain amount of warping reality, moving the goalposts, distorting facts in order to fit the narrative, whether that's a conspiracy theory or whether it's a religion, right? And people crave sort of narrative consistency, I suppose. But when you get someone who is a mad conspiracy theorist about a particular conspiracy theory, right, and you ask them questions, the best way of dealing with it is just ask them questions like, how much would it cost to keep you quiet? How much do you think it would cost to... And you will bend them in knots. You will twist them up like a fucking pretzel. And they will keep trying to justify their mad belief, their crazed, insane narrative that they believe, because they cling to it. It has become part of their sense of self. And you're trying to take that away from them. And then what happens invariably when you start debating with people about religion, conspiracy theories, and now politics to a lot of degree, they can't. If you break their narrative, if you push them to a certain point just with your questions, just by pointing out the glaring plot holes in the narrative that they cling to, they see it as a personal, physical assault on their very being, on their very essence. And that's why they react angrily. In the same way that if you tell someone they're going out with a wrong one, it feels like a personal attack and they react violently. They get angry. They get really fucking outraged. And then they'll shut down the conversation, tell you to fuck off, come out with some ad hominems because they don't want to deal with the fact that, I don't know. You hear this all the time if you listen to the radio on one of the only stations, on one of the only radio presenters that actually takes people to task. Most people go, oh, thank you for your comment. But James O'Brien, whenever you see him absolutely take a Brexiter or a UKIPper or a refucker to task, they get angry and then they have a go at him. They always, it's like inevitable. It's like James O'Bingo. You just press the button because you know they're going to do it. And they're going to go, yeah, but you do this and you do that and you do the other. Ad hominem attack. Because they know they lost their arguments. They've got nothing left. But yeah, the need for narrative consistency is something that is delegated by the kinds of people who fall for this shit to the likes of GB News and Fox News. They do the twisting for you. They do the acrobatics, the mental gymnastics for you and present it to you on TV. Here you go. We've made it all make sense now. It doesn't make any sense to me because I'm not down that rabbit hole, but it makes sense. It makes sense to these fucking, gobshites. And yeah, so we're even the liberal media participates in this. The BBC are terrible for it. They'll talk about Trump, his behavior being controversial rather than criminal, which is what it is. And the both sidesism of the Guardian newspaper, where they have to feel like they have to have the voices from the other. Why? The other side don't do that. You don't pick up a copy of the Scum or the Mail and read a sensible, balanced column about the need for immigration in this country or why trans women should be respected. You don't read that. They don't feel a need for this false equivalence, for both sidesism. They don't. They just trot out their own fucking agenda. And this is something that the Liberals need to get their head around. So yeah, we have the Occupy protests. Remember that? Occupy Wall Streets. No clear goals. What do they want? The end of capitalism? How do we get there? What do you want? What do you want? We want rich people to stop being bastards to us. Okay, cool. What did the rich people do? What did the oligarchs do? What did the tech bros do? They fucking usurped the whole Occupy movement. Took it over. The women's march where women were wearing pussy hats or whatever. Pussy hats, was it? It was cathartic, but it was policy empty. Didn't change anything. Didn't stop Roe versus Wade being overturned. Didn't stop now women being bundled into the back of vans and driven off by masked men. The response to January the 6th, slow, almost apologetic, as if accountability, the worst thing is for accountability, calling for it. I mean, that's impolite, isn't it? And the Democrats are like trapped in this legalism, absolutely relying on the Constitution to ride over the hill and save the fucking day. Well, Trump just uses spectacle. He doesn't give a fuck. You think Trump gives a fuck about the 40-odd bloody lawsuits that the state of California has brought against him? He doesn't care. Not his money. It's the government's money. It's the taxpayers' money. It's the taxpayers of California's money being used to bring a case that he's going to defend using the taxpayers' money from whole of America. He doesn't give a shit. He doesn't care. He just wants spectacle. He wants WrestleMania. Social media turns outrage into dopamine instead of action. Sort of just actually people fucking doing shit. People are doom scrolling, but not actually fucking doing anything. And yeah, this is going back to the later days, the decline and fall of the Soviet Empire. Everybody knows it's broken, but no one knows what to do. And what happens next? Well, I think Trump is going to have his big parade on Saturday, and he's going to announce on his birthday. I think it's Saturday, and he's going to announce the Insurrection Act, and he's going to have mass arrests of protesters under the cover of gang violence. And ICE have already become the de facto secret police. They are the Gestapo of America. They are people in masks bundling vulnerable women into the back of vans and doing God knows what to them. But there's going to be military loyalty tests. We're already seeing this in the higher echelons, where they got rid of people saying they were DEI hires, so they got rid of the women, they got rid of the black people. And in 2026, I don't think they're going to have midterms. I don't think they're going to have. I think Trump's going to run again in 2028 or declare emergency rule, and Americans will be shocked, but they won't do anything about it. And Putin's Russia shows where this ends. Putin was he was president of Russia from 2000 to 2008, at which point he had served his 2 terms as president, and under the terms of the constitution of Russia, he couldn't serve another term as president. So what he did was he got some guy called Dmitry Medvedev, something like that, to become president, who was his prime minister, and he became the prime minister. So from 2008 to about 2012, Putin was the prime minister of Russia. And then after that, he got the constitution changed, amended, so that he could run again as president. And he did. And he became president. And then he changed the constitution again for the third time to say that he could be president for life, which he is. And yes, they have elections. And they fund opposition leaders to oppose him. But it's not real. It's not real. That these elections are fake. The repression is real. That's very real. But the elections, he wins with 96% of the votes. It's utter bullshit, but people just go along with it. Facts become treasonous in these oligarchies. And the thing is, the longer we pretend that this is normal, the harder it becomes to wake up from this reverie, from this dream that people are in, this fantasy world. They don't live in the real world anymore. They've regressed from it. We're not watching The Truman Show, my friends. We are in The Truman Show. Everything we do, everything we think, everything we are is being manipulated by the very, very rich. And they know what they're doing. I know Trump is a fucking dickhead. I know Boris Johnson is a dickhead, but the people pulling their strings, they know what they are doing. And it blows my mind that these fucking conspiracy theories, that they're one world government bullshit and all this, and about lizard people running the world and the Illuminati. And yes, we have a situation in which there are shadowy cabals of motherfuckers going out of their way to destroy everything we know and love. And yet the conspiracy theory community is fucking silent. They're not saying anything. They're not there. The conspiracy that wasn't there. Where are they? So yeah, I mean, there's not much we can do about America, people watching this, because most of you are in the UK. But if there's one thing I would like to do with this channel, and I wish I could do it more, you know, I wish we had more subscribers. Please subscribe if you're not already subscribed. It's just spread awareness. Spread awareness of what is going on, what is happening and why. And I think that we need to do this. We all need to do this. If we want to fight against this in our own little ways, we need to be having these conversations with our parents, with our friends, with our family, with our kids, with our neighbours, with our people down the pub. And I know that it's difficult, but just ask some questions. Why do you believe that? Well, what would be the point? You know, who's paying for it? Ask the questions that need to be asked. Do you think you're easily manipulated? It's a really good question to ask. No. And yet you voted for Brexit. I rest my case. So yeah, talk to people offline. Explain to them what's happening, because if we don't spread the word about what Trump is doing and why he's doing it in this country, in America, it will come to this country. We're already seeing it with Farage, just making up bullshit, saying he's going to bring the Department of Government Efficiency to fucking local governments. He's going to get rid of all the DEI hires. He's just parroting words from the Kremlin. I mean, the White House. Freudian slip there, wasn't it? And it's, if you are in America, Josh is saying, I live in what's left of America. Do it. Keep raising awareness. Keep telling people reality. Hold on to your sense of reality. Because even if you are in a room full of people who believe all this mad shit, if you're the one person in that room that has a hold, a grip, magnificent grip on reality, then you're not going to go mad. You're not going to be part of a movement that is ultimately going to destroy America if it's allowed to continue on as it is. I mean, when I say destroy America, it does sound quite hyperbolic, and I know that. And I don't mean like, when I say the global climate change is going to be the end of the world, well, you got to understand it. It's as we know it. It's the end of America as we know it. But a new America, which exists now, and the America of 2025 is very, very different from the America of 2015. Already, we're seeing this. And there's going to be no way to go back to the old America. There will be something that will replace the new America. There'll be the new America in so many years' time when Trump is dead and things have moved on. But in the meantime, you can never go back. You can never go back to the way it was. You can only learn from your mistakes, and you need to keep pushing forward. But the only way we're going to do that is if we have enough sensible people out there pointing out when this shit is going on. Otherwise, everything becomes hypernormalized. You need people saying, this is crazy. This is not normal. This is not right. This is not fair. This is not just. This is not how I want to live my life. This shouldn't be how you want to live your life. And it shouldn't be the world that we're creating for the next generation. Paula Thomas, thank you very much for the well-timed super chat. £5, thank you very much. One way of raising awareness is to support to US opposition podcasts. My favourite is Countdown with Keith Olbermann. Yeah, I love Keith Olbermann. He's really good. I like him. That's another way of supporting people in America who are telling the truth. To find out who's telling the truth. If you've got no money, just subscribe to their channels. It's free. Just subscribe. Give them a like when they're doing a live stream or when they put a video out. Just give it a like. They don't even need to watch the whole thing. Just support them in that way. I mean, I'd prefer if you watch the whole thing and interacted and everything, but the way that the algorithm works is the more interactions they have, the more people subscribing to their channel, the more people they have giving their video likes, the more people watch their stuff. Please give us a like. And so there are ways of actively supporting people who are telling the truth, not just in the UK, but in America and around the world, without it costing you any money. You don't have to get on a flight and live in a village in North Africa for fucking 6 months to help, okay? And just because you can't do that doesn't mean you're a bad person, doesn't mean that you're not doing enough. Everyone can do what they can do, and that is it. That's all that needs to be done. But if enough people just do what they can do, what they can do with their limited resources, with their limited time, then that's enough. Thank you. Because it'll be enough to stop them. The worst thing that we could possibly do is to give up and let the, give up and just stop paddling and let the whole fucking tsunami of bullshit wash over us and just give up. And if you look at the response of the far right and the response of a lot of the people in positions of power or influence in this country who run newspapers, the likes of Nigel Farage and Tyson, all those gobshites, all they want is for people to shut up. People on the left to shut up. Russ in Cheshire getting threatened with being sued. Tansky, Cavill, Codwalla. They want them to shut up. They want them to stop pointing stuff out. And that's why we need to support them and we need to support each other and just keep pointing it out. I can say that it's the least we can do, but actually, it is the most important thing that we can do right now. To just keep doing that and keep pushing. Ring up the radio. When some knobheads on, when one of these posh, privately educated right-wing pricks on LBC, call them up. Call them out. Tell them that what they believe is absolute bullshit. Don't use the word bullshit because you get kicked off the radio, but, Stephanie, thank you very much for the £2 super chat. I believe Trump is behind UK trans Supreme Court. I don't think it's Trump individually. Thank you for the super chat, by the way. But you're right. It is the same forces that are swirling around Trump, the Heritage Foundation, which funds 55 Tufton Street, which funds the LGB Alliance, which funds For Women Scotland, the likes of J.K. Rowling, who wrote a tweet praising Donald Trump, a guy who has been found by a court of law to be a rapist, to be a motherfucking rapist. And she's like, thank you for this triumph of women's rights. Trump, who bragged about grabbing women by the pussy. A man who bragged about sexually assaulting women. A man who has found by a court of law to have committed rape. A man who has set up things in America so that masked men, gangs of masked men, can grab vulnerable young women off the streets and put them in the back of a van and drive them off to God knows where, but no due process, no oversight, no one checking that they're not abusing that woman in horrific ways. And J.K. Rowling's like, yep, thank you for doing all this stuff for women. My God, these people. But yeah, it's the same forces. It's the same forces that run our tabloids in this country. It's the same forces that run the Tory party and Refuck and all that lot. It's the same. It's the same money. It's the same social media enterprises. It's the same oil oligarchs. The same Russia. The same Kremlin. The same Putin behind it all. Cause chaos and win a special prize. So look, we can fight against this. We will fight against it. There is a sort of heightened sense of urgency now with what's happening in the States. But there's no reason to despair, because if there's one thing that I learned traveling around the world and meeting people, most people are all right. That's it. The problem is it takes one psychopath in 100 to ruin your day or ruin your life. But the vast majority of people, they just want to get on with their life. They want to be respected. They want people to like them. Most people are like that. And that's a good thing. I'll say again, plural of anecdotes isn't data, but I travelled for over 1,600 days, 4 years. And 1 month, spending my time with strangers, foreigners in all these countries. I traveled on public transport. I couch surfed, so I stayed with locals in Cote d'Ivoire, in Gabon, in Papua New Guinea. And I didn't come to any harm. I didn't have anything robbed off me. I didn't get into a fight. I didn't get mugged. I didn't get stabbed. I didn't get ill. I didn't get ill. Fuck. I didn't have to see a doctor once in the whole journey. I did actually go and see a doctor when I was in Spain, but because I had to, because of the TV show that I was making, I needed to have a medical before I went to Africa. That was it. So either I am the luckiest badger to have ever badgered anyone, or maybe the world isn't as bad and it isn't as scary and the people in it aren't as fucking awful as the right-wing media would have you believe. Because they want to sell that narrative that these places are shitholes when they're not. They want to sell the narrative that everyone who lives in these countries just wants to come to Britain and sponge off our NHS when they don't. France takes in twice as many refugees as we do. And in fact, there wouldn't be any fucking refugees fleeing Africa at the moment if it wasn't for Vladimir Putin and his Wagner troops going around Africa causing instability. Most people stay where they are. Most people are happy to, there are some nomads amongst us like myself, but most people, especially women, they like being where they are, but their childhood friends that they grow up with and live in a village or live in a town, live in a city, they've got their mates, they like their life, they don't want to give up, they've spent a lot of time and effort making their home nice, decorating, doing the garden, whatever. They don't want to leave. They don't want to pack everything into a backpack and get the fuck out of there. Go and live on the other side of the world in a country that doesn't want them. They don't want to. Alistair, chat, you all stay safe and have a good day wherever you are headed on another live. Hope to see some of you later on the lives. Yes, on our lives. On in our lives. Thanks, Alistair, for being a mod and for the kind contributions to the channel. Obviously, we're going to have Prime Minister's questions today at 12 o'clock. So I'm going to have to get prepped for that. And also at 12:30, directly after Prime Minister's questions, we'll be having the spending review, the spending statement from Rachel Reeves. So please come and join us for that. It's going to start at 12 o'clock. Watch party, PMQs and this statement read out by the Chancellor of the Exchequer. And then I'll be back again this evening at 6 o'clock with lovely Rachel. And we will be jumping back down the rabbit hole. We were going to talk last week about remakes and sequels that are better than the originals. Unfortunately, we realized there were so many remakes that are pretty good, and we also talked about really bad ones as well, that we didn't get a chance to talk about sequels. So tonight, if you want to come along, we're just going to have a natter about all things Star Wars, Star Trek, Stargate, Starman, Starbar, Star in your eyes, stars in your eyes. So yeah, please join us for that. It will be a good old laugh. In the meantime, look, I'm going to quickly go to the papers. I'll be as quick as I can, and I'll let you go. We've got 19 billion new builds. This is going to come up in the spending review today. 19 billion to build new houses. Do you know where we could get 39 billion from really quickly? We could have not left the EU. There you go. And there's a guy from number 42 on the front cover there, because he has to be on the front cover for everything. Unfortunately, because of the person standing behind him, he looks like he's got like something coming out of his chin. Like he's got this Studio Ghibli thing going on. Look. He looks like in Studio Ghibli when the young woman becomes an old woman and she's like this. Look, it's not a great picture. That I would have used AI to get rid of that sort of blob there. Anyway, rugby league hero Billy Boston becomes the sport's first knight. My God! So only rugby union stars get bloody 90s. Well, that makes sense because rugby union's posh in it, where rugby league is a working class sport. The Good Hat Guide, the best ascot guide, so you need to know where to get your hat from for Glastonbury for posh people. We've got Israeli ministers sanctioned by UK. This is the ministers Smotrich and Ben Gavir, some pair of absolute gobshites in the cabinet of Netanyahu, who have made absolutely horrific comments about killing babies. Oh, that's nice, isn't it? This is a tech entrepreneur called Davina here with her baby. She was denied entry into London Tech Week because she brought along her baby daughter. There you go, nice bit of everyday sexism for you there. And NHS won't hit targets even with an extra 30 billion. And Starmer's waiting list pledge is overly optimistic, says someone. Official modelling shows. Okay, I'm an official model. They call me the body. Daily Express here. Former pupil shoots 10 dead in Austrian school. Attack is horrific. 11 people died in this attack. A 20 to 21-year-old fucking gobshite going into school. Licensed weapon owner. Let's not let people have guns. Let's not let people have guns. Let's not let civilians have fucking guns, eh? Because they only go and do things like this. Asylum chaos as migrants housed in 81% of areas. All right, whatever. There's a picture of the woman from the family, because there has to be. She's been on a museum visit. She went to the museum. Imagine for a moment if you went to the museum and then the next day you went on the front cover of the news. Graham goes to a museum. I mean, maybe if I'd gone to the museum, smashed the place up, maybe if I'd gone and stolen things, retrieved the Benin bronzes, taken them back to Nigeria or something, maybe that could be a front page news story. But literally just going to a museum. This is the world in which we live. Come on, Rachel, now for family farm U-turn. No. Just no. Fuck off. Fuck off, farmers. Sorry. I know I'm not going to make many friends in the farming community by saying this, but this is inheritance tax. It's just a loophole that is being used by wealthy landowners to not have to pay inheritance, for their offspring not to have to pay inheritance tax like everyone else has to pay. Ruthless exceptionalism. Oh, so you want 2-tier now? You want 2-tier inheritance? Okay. If you got enough money to buy vast tracts of land, your kids don't have to pay inheritance. Fuck off. Failing the test, could it be time to scrap GCSEs? I don't know. UK imposes sanctions on Israeli ministers for inciting violence. Absolutely. We were kidnapped. This is Greta Thunberg accusing Israel of, after UK flagged vessel carrying aid towards Gaza was intercepted 125 miles from the coast, which couldn't have been a nice experience. But kudos to Greta Thunberg for actually walking the walk. She got on the boat knowing that she could possibly die. And I've got a lot of respect for Greta Thunberg. I mean, mostly because she got on a fucking boat in the middle of winter to go across the Atlantic. And as someone who's travelled places over the Atlantic, around the world, on boats, on sailboats, I know how fucking scary it is. I know how many things there are to go wrong. On a boat, there is literally everything that can kill you on a boat. There's just so many ways to die on a boat. It is very, very scary. And she was only like fucking 16, 17 at the time. So big respect to Greta. But yeah, spending on affordable housing to rise to 39 million. We've done that. Moving down here, revenge massacre at school. This is about the fucking incident in Austria. Oh my God, they've dug up the Queen to go on the front cover of the Dale. My secret to feeling happy and confident in the 50s decided to come off. Oh, God. She given money for this? Revealed the single word that spelt the end for Meghan and Harry in the eyes of the Queen. Okay, whatever. Reeves rocked by job slump. Rachel Reeves has been hit by a job slump as she prepares to take a gamble on the nation's finance with a giant spending spree. Okay, whatever. Moving on. Oh my God, they got another picture of someone else in the family. You're like, this is mad, isn't it? We've had the Queen, we've had the dead Queen, we've had the King, we've had Princess Meghan. We've now got... What did she do? She visited the V&A Museum. Okay. Rayner drops law on rough sleepers. Now, this is a really interesting story that I probably could have done more on this morning, but you need to know. So there is a vagrancy law, which is over 200 years old, which they're getting rid of. And they are replacing it with, it's going to be repealed next spring, and it is going to be draw a line under nearly 2 centuries of injustice towards some of the most vulnerable in society. This is fantastic. This is fantastic news. It has been welcomed as an absolute game changer by Shelter and other charities that help people who are homeless. There shouldn't be any homeless people. There were no homeless people during COVID. We found homes for them all. Isn't that nice? Starmer's Chagos deal funds tax cuts in Mauritius. Okay, whatever. And then Greta Thunberg coming back. The world needs more angry young women like me, says Greta. Yeah, I agree. Police investigation after 3 children die at same care unit. Inquiry reopened into boy 5 who suffocated at Britain's biggest rehab facility for disabled youngsters, where 2 more have since died. Family say that the original probe was a disgrace. Yeah, one is, I mean, you know, when there's a pattern in these things, it's always worth checking out. There's a picture of Rita Ora, I think, there. The truth is out. Retired Colonel, I planted UFO evidence. Okay, cool. And then we've got the Financial Times here. Sanction blow, Israeli cabinet ministers hit. There's a couple of gobshites here. And then we've got Reeves puts £39 billion affordable homes, a drive at hard to bid to renew Britain. There's going to be a £113 billion infrastructure splurge, day-to-day cash squeeze, crunch point for Labour, tax fears linger. Europe's former crisis spots see bond market gains as big economies suffer. This is Italian, Spanish, and Greek sovereign bonds have mounted a relentless rally that has narrowed the gap with Germany's benchmark borrowing costs to nearly the smallest in over a decade. The countries that, along with Portugal and Ireland, were deemed the pilgs as in the Eurozone debt crisis, have emerged as the unlikely winners from this year's bond market ructions. So there you go. If you're into your bonds, James Bonds. Yeah. I heard about the vagrancy law. So you've lost everything. That's very naughty and you should be punished. Only took 400 years to repeal, says Anne Phillips. Yeah. Fucking crazy, isn't it? Isn't it crazy? They need to change the law on allowing people to sleep in campers. A lot of towns ban it. Yeah, which I think is ridiculous, right? So in Australia, when you're driving along, they have spaces at the side of the road in the outback where you can go, or even in the countryside in Victoria, where you can pull over at the side of the road and you can park up and sleep in your car. That's it. You sleep in your car. It's fine. It's fine. Just a bit of wasteland, side of the road. And they usually have a porta cabin there, which has toilets and sometimes even a shower. So you can freshen up. And it's just there for free. Just stop. Get out. Use the shower. There's nothing there. Like, it's miles from anywhere. Not like you can set up a camp properly because it'd be mad. But, yeah. Here in the UK, you're driving. You've been driving all day. You've been stuck in one of the numerous traffic jams that plague our country every day. And you're sitting there in the traffic jam and you think, I feel tired. I could do with a sleep. So you pull over and you go to the next service station, the services at the side of the motorway, and you park your car and you fall asleep in the car and you get a fine. You're not allowed to sleep in the car. So that people who are sleepy, and instead of having a little sleep, which is what they need, will go and, pull over, stretch their legs, have some coffee, get back in the car and drive again. If they've got ADHD like me, the coffee's not going to touch the sides. I swear to you, I can drink a double shot fucking espresso and fall asleep immediately afterwards. It doesn't do the wake up thing for me. I think it makes my brain more active, but it doesn't necessarily keep me awake. I don't know if it works for other people. But the point is, the safest thing to do is to have a fucking sleep. Because one of the big problems they have in Australia, because it's a big country, people are driving for 5 hours straight and they fall asleep at the wheel, which is really fucking dangerous. But no, we'll make it illegal because we need them to, check into a travel lodge for an hour, spend £100 to fucking sleep in a bed for an hour. The argument about sleeping in car parks is that some who do so leave rubbish, and worse, that shouldn't be a reason to penalise everyone. They've got cameras. If you throw rubbish out the side of your fucking car into the car park, then you should get a fine there and then. If you put a cigarette butt on the floor in this country, it should be £100 fine. There and then, £100. Sorry, we saw you on the CCTV. You were smoking a cigarette. You threw it on the floor. £100 fine. Thank you. Take that money and run with it. Keep doing it until they stop fucking throwing their cigarette butts on the floor. The cigarette butts go into the gutters. They go into the water systems. They go into our rivers. They go into our streams. They go into the seas. They go into fish's stomachs, and they comprise the second largest mass of plastics in the ocean after fishing gear is cigarette butts. So yeah, fucking find them. Find people for breaking the law. Don't find people for... Well, they might break the law if they do this. If we let them sleep in their car and have a couple of hours kip, which will, refresh them to be able to drive some more. They might throw their rubbish at the side of the cars. So yeah, do them for that, definitely. And especially if they're throwing it out of their car and they've got the fucking number plate on the car. Pretty easy to catch. People are converting vans and trucks into living spaces and can't stay anywhere because the council stop it. Yeah, it's fucking crazy. I mean, look, there's a reasonable adjustment to be had here, Like, fair enough. You can sleep for a few hours in the nighttime when there's no one there in a fucking car park in a service station at 3 a.m. outside, I don't know, Milton Keynes. I don't give a fuck, right? Fair enough. Sleep in your car. Fine. It's fine, right? But if you want to stay there for an extra night, no, you can't do that. Get moving. Get back on the fucking motorway. See you later. But yeah, I mean, the fact that everyone's number plate is registered wherever you fucking go. If you had a rule saying, look, you can't just spend your whole time driving up and down fucking motorways and sleeping in your car every night, But it is maddening. It is maddening, the idea that to exist when you've lost everything and you're living in your car, just trying to get to sleep is something that they won't let you do. How dare you have lost everything? And so exactly, it's a mess that should be penalised and already can be. Yeah, absolutely. The BBC put it in a very unbiased way: fear and loathing over van dwellers on Bristol's leafy streets. You see, the thing is, the way that things are going, right? Unless these people actively park outside someone's house or in someone's driveway, who cares? Like, honestly, like, why is it such a fucking issue? Because anywhere that's in a city centre, you've got to pay to park anyway. Anywhere that's out in the leafy suburbs, because of the way things are going, right? You'll either be able to park in a actual driveway if it's your house, or if you haven't got a driveway, you're in a terrace street, then the space outside your house will accommodate 1 or 2 cars that can be plugged in to plug them in, to charge them up, and no other car's going to be allowed to park there. So if someone does park their van outside the house, outside your house, thinking they're going to stay for the night, at the moment, they can probably get away with that. But when those are specific spaces for charging your car, unless you have the permit for that space, it'd be numbered 51. If you have that, if you live at that house, that space comes with the house. And you don't have to pay extra for it, by the way. I think it's mad that people have to pay extra for their fucking car parking space in London and New York and places like that. People spend more on their car parking space in London when they live in central London than a lot of people spend on their rent. Which is kind of crazy. You're renting out like this little rectangle of tarmac. Crazy. And now Kent has gone full fash. I doubt it will be any better. I mean, some of those HGV drivers are foreign. Indeed. There are loads of people in the US sleeping in cars. So when will people rent their cars out for homeless to sleep in, or just let them in? I have a registered charity app with very verified car users. I don't think that would be very helpful for homeless people to be put into cars for the night because they need help. Most of them have got mental health problems. They need our compassion and support, and they need to be put into sheltered accommodation where they can be looked after and given that support to get them back on their feet. Help with their addictions, help with the trauma, the PTSD, whatever it is that has their situation that's caused them to end up living on the streets. That's what needs to be done. I mean, trying to make money out of it by giving them your car to sleep in seems mad to me. Dark 4x4, thank you very much for the extra £2. You didn't need to do that. Swan, now all paper filters, make them mandatory. Yeah. Simon Smith, BBC posted 1 week, and the next they condemned Rayner's plans for 1.5 new builds with solar panels. The BBC are apparently trying to get people who are refuckers to come on board with them or something. I don't know. Anyway, it's been a nice show. Talked about hypernormalisation. We've been through the papers. Really, really appreciate the super chats that have come in, especially Dark 4x4. Thank you so much. You're going to see a lot of me today if you want to, because I'm going to be on now in an hour and a bit's time with 5 minutes of questions, followed by, as I said earlier, the spending statement from our Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rachel Reeves. So that's probably going to go on for an hour. There'll be a debate after it, whatever. And then this evening, we've got the rabbit hole with me and the lovely Rachel. So please join us for that. It should be a laugh. We're going to have a bloody good laugh and talk about anything but politics. If you haven't watched it before, the rabbit hole is our anything but politics show where we talk about pop culture and music and games and TV. I got to play the new Mario Kart game, so we can talk about that on the Switch 2. Not that I can afford the Switch 2, but we have friends. I have friends who have more money than me. Anyway, so thank you so much for watching. Thank you very much to Dark 4x4 in particular for that absolutely amazing hyper chat there. That was really, really kind of you. And I'll see you in about an hour and 12 minutes. Okay, we'll see each other again. In the meantime, stay beautiful. Hello, good evening, welcome, and goodbye.